All right, what is up, Utah fans? This is Joseph back with the Utah Utes Football Digest, and I am coming to you here from the hotel breakfast area in the evening. So, I'm sure you guys have noticed the picture quality hasn't been as good the past couple days. It's because I've been on the road on vacation, going down the East Coast. So, if you notice this background, pretty cool background, this little picture wood engraving thing over there. So, pretty cool. But I'm excited, guys. It's Utah versus UCLA. This is going to be the deep dive breakdown. We're going to talk about all the matchups. We're going to talk about all the players. It should be a ton of fun and a ton of information for whether you're a Utah fan or a UCLA fan or just a fan of the game in general. It should be a ton of info to give you an idea of what needs to happen for this game to go one way or another. There's a lot to go over, and there's a lot that's not quite solidified or still up in the air about information we just don't have yet, really, for both teams. And I think you guys will appreciate when I dive into that, and I'll dive into that right at the beginning of this video here. Before we dive in, though, please make sure you smash the like button. Also, comment down below, who do you guys think is going to win? Do you guys think it's going to be Utah, or do you guys think it's going to be UCLA? I'd love to hear your opinion. Also, why? Why do you feel confident one way or the other? To be info, I'd love to hear. And make sure, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out Utah Utes football content all year. It should be a ton of fun. And if you haven't yet, share the video, with your friends, with your, with whoever, Facebook page, whatever, just share the video. And if you guys do hear any noise in the background, it's because I'm in a hotel breakfast area. But making sure I get you guys the video. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let's talk about Utah versus UCLA. All right, and before we dive in and break down the grades, there's two things we really need to look at. One for Utah, one for UCLA. And for Utah, we'll talk about that first. For Utah, Whittingham has said directly, I think he said the number is 14 to 16, but I'll go ahead and go with the number 10 plus. There are 10 plus significant players on the Utah team that have not been playing so far this season. Now, I think this is a game where if they're close, you're going to get them in there. It's conference play. You're going to want them in there for this game. So this is a game where we'll probably see a lot of Utah players that have been injured and not been playing be in this game. Why is that important? Like I said, that's 10 plus significant players for Utah, right? Just an example, Vele and Pittman were sidelined last week because of they needed to rest up, right? I'd be shocked if both of those guys are not in this game. It's just one example. A bunch of injuries on the D-line for Utah that I'm expecting at least a couple of those guys back this game. Obviously, Cam Rising, Brant Keithy. I don't expect Brant Keithy back, but would I be shocked if he's in there? No, I wouldn't be. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, though, with Brant. I think Cam's got a really good shot. Just the idea is Utah has a bunch of players that have not been playing due to injury. We could see a ton of those players in this game, or we could see very few players in this game. That's a variable just outside of my control that I can't speak too much on, but I'll try to touch on it a little bit as we break down the two teams. The other thing is the strength of schedule for these two teams. So for Utah, we're looking at a team that has played some tough opponents, and they've looked, pretty good at times versus those tough opponents. And that's a good sample size, right? It's not like they've played this, backbreaker of a schedule where you have a clear idea of what Utah looks like against top tier competition, but they've played, a now top 25 team in Florida that just beat Tennessee, and they played Baylor away at Baylor, and Baylor looked way different in that game than they did against Texas State. And then there's obviously the Weber State game, but outside of the Weber State game, Utah played two decent games, probably a pretty tough team in Florida now that we look back on it, but Utah's played some games, whereas UCLA really hasn't played any games yet. Not that the teams they played were terrible, but the teams they played were not good, right? They're Coastal Carolina, not exactly going to knock your hair back, right? Who's the other one? We got Coastal Carolina and let me just look it up real quick while we're talking about it. UCLA schedule. I should know this, but I don't have it off the top of my head. Okay, UCLA, yeah, San Diego State. And San Diego State has looked pretty rough this year. So, and then they played, what's the other team? North Carolina Central, which is FCS. So, we don't know that much about UCLA. There's 3 games worth of data, but the data is against teams that aren't great, right? And not that Utah's played great teams, but these are teams that if you made me bet right now that whether all these teams are in the bottom half of FBS teams or all these teams are in the top half of FBS teams, I'd say it's more likely that all these teams are in the bottom half of FBS teams at the end of the year. That's just to give you guys an idea. This context is important as we break down these grades because UCLA looks pretty darn good, dude. They really do. They look like a really good team. And I actually do believe they are a good team. But it's probably not as good as the numbers might say when you consider that all these numbers are against, slightly not great competition, which Coastal Carolina is probably the best team they've played so far, but again, not a juggernaut. So I just wanted to touch on all that before we break it down. But now let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to break down the grades. We're going to go into a lot of detail here. Start by looking at the 2 quarterbacks. So we've got the first quarterback here, Dante Moore. You see him here. In total QBR, he is number 10 in the country. That's pretty impressive. I did not expect him to be that high when I started breaking down these 2 teams. You take a look here. One thing I find very peculiar is this number right here. Plays is 62. So this basically says how many plays are actually gradable based on QBR. So how many plays is he actually getting an opportunity to earn a number, which is more than anything, how many plays does he get an opportunity to throw the ball, right? And you look here, a 62 plays, that seems awfully low. And what that tells me is, yes, he's doing a good job on the sample size that he gets, but the team seems to be doing everything they possibly can to keep the ball out of his hands at all times, right? And I know he's young, and I'm guessing that has more to do with it than anything else. But this QBR, guys, this 86.2, which is a great QBR, is really only on 62 plays, and it's against pretty low-grade competition. So I would not be too intimidated by Dante Moore. I know there's a lot of hype around him, and he is a good player. But again, 62 plays against some pretty low-end competition. Now we go ahead and scroll down a little bit. Nate Johnson, he's the 44th QBR in the country. Not terrible, right under Carson Beck. 69.9 QBR. And this is on 72 plays. So he actually has more of a sample size than Dante Moore. And when we look at that, guys, I want you to consider, if you guys are Utah fans, you're watching basically every snap, every game. He has more of a sample size than Dante Moore. How is that even a thing? Nate Johnson was getting split time at quarterback for a while there and really didn't play much until the end of the Baylor game. So I would just say there's a ton of hype around Dante Moore. Neither him nor Nate Johnson has enough of a sample size to really give us any idea of what they're going to be this year. So I think Dante Moore has done great with what he's been given, and I think Nate's done pretty well with what he's been given too. But both of them are kind of a blank slate still. 2 really talented guys that we're not sure what their real ceiling is for this specific season. So those are the quarterbacks. I just want to touch on that again. If Cam Rising's in, I think we have a huge edge at quarterback. But I'd say when we look at these numbers, Dante Moore's sample size is so small that I think I would give the QB edge to UCLA. I think Dante Moore right now is probably a little better than Nate Johnson, but not edge by much, in a very unsure edge where it definitely Nate Johnson could be the better quarterback. Dante Moore is going against by far the best defense that he has gone up against this year, when they play Utah. And they're going to be coming into our house. It's going to be loud. It's going to be tough to focus. So definitely a couple things to consider there when it comes to the quarterbacks. Look at the stats for the UCLA Bruins. So right out the gate, we got Dante Moore. We were just talking about the QBR, but he's going 32 for 51, 615 yards in the season, so a little over 200 yards a game so far. He did not start the whole game against Coastal Carolina. He came in, towards the end of the first quarter, I believe. 62% completion percentage, 7 touchdowns, for 1 interception. That's a really good number. 7 TDs, 1 pick, and it's only on 51 throws. It's pretty cool. He's gotten sacked 3 times, so he is a guy that can get sacked. He's gotten sacked once every game, so he's going to be their QB. Again, it's not a huge sample size, guys. He's only thrown the ball 51 times. The competition has not exactly been amazing. Now we move down a little. We go to the rushing for UCLA. The rushing attack for UCLA, they're giving the vast majority of the carries to these two right here, Carson Steele and TJ Harden. Super high yards per carry average. They can run the ball, right? 9.3 and an 8.1. That's ridiculous yards per carry. Both of these guys have 2 touchdowns. These are 2 really good players that you got to keep an eye on. Again, this is not great talent they're going against, but, they're still guys that can be deadly weapons for UCLA. They'll be tough for Utah, but should be containable. Again, you really don't know how good these guys are. They could be amazing. They could be average. The yards per carry across the board for UCLA is just ridiculous. They've got, 7 guys that are averaging over 8 yards per carry. So pretty wild there. You got to imagine most of that is due to the talent they're playing against so far. All right, receiving wise, I've heard a lot about this guy, J. Michael Sturdivant. 9 receptions, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns. Seems like a good player. He's averaging 24 yards per catch. Tells me we got a pretty explosive guy on our hands. Let's just take a look at him. I just want to see if he's the guy that I'm thinking of. Boom. Let's see here. Boom. Game log for 2023. Yeah, so I last year I believe this guy played for Cal, and he's a transfer because you can see last year they played UCLA. So this guy seems like he's a pretty good player. He's going to be a guy to keep an eye on, and definitely one of the matchups that Utah is going to have to address if we want to win this game. They got a couple other good guys here, right? But he's the main one. He has almost twice as many receiving yards as the next guy. So I'm guessing Dante Moore gets pretty fixated on him, and the game plan is basically, hey, your first read is J. Michael Sturdivant. These are, probably these 3 are like the next 3 guys he reads, but this is the main guy. You shut down J. Michael Sturdivant, it's going to force him to go 2nd, 3rd, 4th options on the play, and that's where he'll start to make mistakes. Dante Moore's young, and that's going to be a big opportunity for Utah. Now let's talk about their defense, and their defense all starts with this guy right here. He's a beast. Laiatu Latu. He's got 1 interception, 1 forced fumble, 7 tackles, and 4 sacks, guys. We've only played 3 games, and this guy has 4 sacks. And just to give you guys a piece of info on the PFF end, right now he is the number 1 graded PFF edge rusher in the country. So definitely a guy that we have to give a lot of respect to, and he's going to be going up against one of our lowest graded players in Spencer Fano, the left tackle. Pretty scary, pretty intense, and it's going to be a tough matchup there. He's a beast. Gabe Murphy is another one of their edge rushers. He's very good. Not insane numbers here, but his grades are quite good. He has quite a few hurries that don't always show up on the stat sheet. Sacks are the flashy number, but hurries and quarterback hits are important, and Gabe Murphy actually has quite a bit of those. For tackles, they've got Darius Muasau leading the group. Their 3 linebackers, just like normal, are the ones getting the tackles. And a DB here, Kamari Ramsey. What is he? All right, yeah, so that is the stats for UCLA. And now let's move on to Utah. We're going to look at is the Utah Utes. We're going to take a look at the stats, kind of talk about what we're seeing here so far. So the first guy to look at is Nate Johnson. On 32 attempts, he has 281 yards with a completion percentage of 68.8. One touchdown. He's been sacked twice. He looked really good at the end of the game against Baylor and followed it up with a performance against Weber State that I think has to get you excited, right? He looked awesome. He was running the offense. It was pretty vanilla, but it was our first time getting an opportunity to see Nate just drop back, run the offense, do his job, that sort of deal. And he did a good job with it, right? Again, against FCS competition, but you got to be happy. The numbers look good. 68.8% completion percentage is pretty damn good. So you got to be happy about that. So if Cam is not in this week, Nate is not a bad option. We'll see how he does against a real Pac-12 defense, and it's going to be a tough defense. We just looked at some of the numbers. This UCLA defense is not shabby. They're a good team. But Nate seems like our next best option if Cam's not in there. So now the guy that's been the real star of this offense is Jaquindon Jackson. He is awesome, right? 33 carries, 213 yards, 6.5 yards per carry. No touchdowns on the year, but a bunch of long runs. You can see here he has a long run of 44 yards. And he basically single-handedly kept us in the Baylor game. And when you look at this average yards per carry, 6.5, you could say that it's not crazy impressive, but the guy is doing it against 8 people in the box almost every other play. And there's not a lot else that's been going on with this offense. So it's very impressive what he's been able to do. Nate Johnson, we talked about his passing number. He's also a very good runner, probably one of the most athletic guys on this team. He's averaging 4.5 yards a carry, and he has 3 TDs on the ground. Jalen Glover here, another guy that's a good player, 23 carries, 93 yards on the 23 carries. He broke away. He has 2 touchdowns in the year, so pretty good there. Jalen Glover's been a solid, change of pace back for Utah and is consistently just getting more and more carries and more opportunities in this offense. I think he's going to continue to develop as the year goes on and looks really good. Again, he's in a similar situation where when he's in there, he's going against always 7 guys in the box, sometimes 8 guys in the box. It's a tough situation to be in. Mekhi Bernard, beast, but he's out for the season, so that's kind of the Utah running game. I think you'll see the playbook open up a little this game. You'll probably see Mikey Matthews and Money Parks get some wide receiver end around, some opportunities to make plays with the ball. You'll probably see that. All right, and then receiving-wise for Utah, Money Parks has 138 yards. He leads receivers in the year, but that's really off one huge play. He's grading out decently for PFF, above average, but hasn't been killing it so far. You'd like to see a little more. He does have 2 touchdowns, and against Weber State, he broke away a nice play. It was like an out route. He cut it upfield and got a touchdown. It was a short play, but a good play by Money Parks there. Mikey Matthews is the guy that I'm expecting to. Hopefully, he earned his spot in the rotation and is going to get some more opportunities to get more passes thrown his way, that sort of deal. But again, Devon Vele and Micah Pittman are both back. It is going to be fun to see kind of how this plays out, who's getting the carries, who's the guy now, because Money Parks and Mikey Matthews looked great while Devon Vele and Micah Pittman were out. Munir McClain last week. This is in one game, guys. Again, against the FCS competition in Weber State. But Munir McClain, 3 catches, 92 yards. One of those catches went for 49, which means the other 2 catches were averaging like 21.5 yards a catch. Really good look for this guy. Munir McClain's a guy I want to see get more touches. Very promising there. And now as we move to the defensive statistics for Utah, let's take a look. Lavani Damuni, a guy that's been grading out pretty well according to PFF, 19 tackles on the year. No real other plays, but he is flying around the field well. He looks good. I feel like you saw him against Baylor really kind of step into his own shoes, get a stride, and starts to look pretty good. Pretty impressed with what we're seeing there. And he looks like a solid centerpiece of this defense at the middle linebacker position. Cole Bishop, 17 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 pass defense, 1 interception, 1 forced fumble. If you guys have been watching Utah football, you guys know Cole Bishop is the heart and soul of this defense. He's a beast of a playmaker and just a guy that is going to make plays and should be a difference maker for Utah. Now, Lander Barton is another big-time player for Utah. Just a straight killer. One pass defense, 1 interception. He ran it back for a touchdown against Weber State. No sacks for him, but 13 tackles. And we got a bunch of other guys here, right, that have been making plays. But I'd say probably Lander, Cole Bishop, Lavani are the guys at the linebacker position that are making the most plays. Let's go ahead and look at sacks and talk a little more about the D-line. Jonah Ellis is having a heck of a year. 9 tackles, 2 sacks, 1 pass defense. Logan Fano looks really good too. He's got 2 sacks as well. 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery. So just on our D-line alone, we've got 5 sacks. And then you add Cole Bishop in, we've got 7 sacks in the year. You got to be pretty happy about that. We're going to need to get back there. We're going to need to generate pressure against Dante Moore if we want to win this game. Rattle the kid a little bit, make him feel, uneasy, insecure. And for the fans, get loud and rattle him a little. So that's the stats for Utah. The team statistics for both of these teams. So first, looking at UCLA, points per game, they're 31 points per game. That's number 44 in the country. And that's pretty impressive. That means you got a pretty good offense there. But I would say when you account for the talent, guys, like really, you got to look at that. You got to look at the fact UCLA has not played any Power 5 teams. You got to consider it. That 31 points a game is probably more like 20, 21 points a game. I'm not trying to say all the teams they played sucked, but I mean, you're only doing 31 points a game and you played 2 G5 teams and 1 FCS team. You'd want that number to be higher. So I'd say that's a number. A lot of these numbers look a lot better than they are. Now, yards per game, 485.5 yards per game. That's pretty awesome. The problem is these two numbers don't add up, right? How are you number 15 in the country for yards per game, but you're number 44 in the country for points per game? Well, I'm going to tell you right here, red zone scoring percentage. They are number 120 in the country against one of the easier lineups anyone faced to start the year. What does that mean? That means almost half the time they are not scoring when they get into the red zone. That's a huge advantage for Utah. I'll show you in a minute just how good Utah is at stopping people from scoring. They've got some good numbers here, but they do have some trouble punching in the ball. I think when you look at that, 31 points a game against significantly lower-end talent than what Utah is going to bring on the field. I mean, Utah's got one of the best defenses in the country. If you think you're going to bring that type of effort against Utah and it's going to work, you might have another thing coming for you. Now, where the numbers are pretty dang impressive are going to be opponent UCLA's defense. Now, opponent red zone scoring, exactly 50% of the time their opponents are scoring. That's super low. That's number 6 in the country. That means that's one of the best numbers in the entire country, right? Number 6, again, against inferior talent. It's hard to describe the teams they played against because they're not garbage, but I'd say that slate of games is quite below average. It's not like they played 3 FCS teams, but they played 2 G5s and 1 FCS. All right, so when you look at this, and this is only counting the G5. Sorry, just so you guys know, when we break down the numbers, that's not very good. I mean, that's pretty good, but you got to adjust for it, right? I'd say it's probably more like number 20 to number 30 team in the country when you adjust for the talent they played. Still good. That's pretty impressive. Opponent yards per play is pretty impressive, 3.9. That's pretty dominating, again, against inferior talent, but, still impressive either way. Opponent yards per game is actually pretty high considering the talent they played. 302 yards per game allowed by their defense. When you consider that they're not putting up a ton of points, this is probably a good amount of true yards and not like garbage time, bend don't break defense type yards. So that's as much as that's not the worst number, right? Number 24 in the country. That number is probably more like 50 to 60 when you adjust for talent. So, take that into account. Opponent points per game, this is really impressive, 11.5. And they're letting up, they're not letting up a ton of yards, but they're really aggressive and good at stopping opponents from scoring in the red zone. So obviously it seems like we need to take advantage of the problem that the fact that they have problems scoring in the red zone and make sure that we get to the red zone, we do score because they are very good at stopping teams from scoring in the red zone. All right, this is one thing to look at here. So opponent so how many running plays are they running? They're running 52.7% of the time, and they're having 6 yards per rush, and that's number 7 in the country. Like I said, a little lower in talent, but you got to take that into account. I mean, even if you adjust that down to like a 4.5 or a 5, that's still a pretty good number. Even if they're like the true numbers a little lower, they're a good running team. You could tell they're a good team at running the ball. They're averaging 205.5 yards per game. That's pretty good. you gotta give credit where credit's due. So they're a pretty good team. Pass plays, they're number 80 in the country for pass play percentage. And what that tells me, guys, is, again, we looked at it earlier, they're not trying to have Dante Moore throw a lot. That's what we want to do. We want to create situations where we shut down this running game and put them in situations where Dante Moore has to throw the ball. If we can do that, it's going to be good for Utah. And it doesn't mean that Dante Moore is going to suck, but what it means is that we're going to have the highest odds of putting our team in a situation to win, right? They can run the ball. The numbers play that out. They're only throwing 29 times a game. Jeez, dude, that is low. That is really low. So, is what it is. And then they're allowing a decent completion percentage considering the talent, right in the middle, which means it's not hard to get a good completion percentage against them. Opponent yards per pass is, that's pretty good on their end. So, sack percentage, pretty good, but adjust for talent, it's probably more middle of the pack. So that's, and then QB sacked percentage. Their QB is getting sacked 4.92% of the time, so that puts them right at number 55 in the country. But you adjust for talent, and this number probably takes a pretty big jump. We're going to get opportunities to get back there and make some plays. So our D-line is going to have to get back there and sack that quarterback because against G5 teams, they're middle of the pack, where now they're about to go against their first Power 5 D-line, and we're going to get back there. We're going to cause some havoc. I think that number is going to change quite a bit, and that's going to be to our favor. And so those are the team stats for UCLA. And now let's talk about the team stats for Utah. So rushing yards per game, Utah 164.5. That's number 46 in the country. Again, we've played a decent amount harder competition that a lot of other teams have played, so you got to take that into account. But, above average running the ball right now, and that's against stacked boxes because our starting quarterback's out. Yards per rush, you'd like this to be better, 4.3. It's not where you want it to be. Again, stacked boxes, what are you going to do? We're running nearly 60% of the time in these games. It's really funny. A lot of these numbers for UCLA and Utah are so similar, like really good teams at running the ball that have unproven quarterback in, and you're trying to take as much pressure away from that quarterback as possible. Now, this is good for Utah. Opponent yards per rush is 2.7. That's number 19 in the country, and none of these numbers count the Weber State game. For either UCLA or Utah, this doesn't count any FCS teams. So these are real numbers. So that means Utah against 2 Power 5 teams held them to less than 3 yards per carry. Opponents really don't want to run the ball against us, only 25 attempts per game. That's number 7 in the country. And rush yards per game, we're at 60. Damn, that is impressive. 67 rush yards against us per game. I think when you look at these numbers, guys, it should get you pretty excited about the prospects for Utah. UCLA is a really good running team, but Utah's defense is elite and really good at stopping the run, right? You look at passing for Utah, we're pretty low on our pass percentage. We're one of the lowest in the country. And again, that's because we got backup QBs in and we're trying to take pressure off them. Completion percentage is pretty rough, but that's more of a Bryson Barnes thing. He's at like 48% on the season, which is dreadful. Where Nate Johnson's actually pretty damn high at 68.8. That's one of the higher completions percentages in the country. So you got to feel happy about that. Pass yards per game, very low for Utah. I don't think we win this game by getting a ton of passing yards. I think we're going to need to get some. I mean, Nate can't be irrelevant in the game, but he should not be having the game on his back. We should be, spread the field a little. We need to get the run game going, but give him easy checkdowns, give him bubble screens, give him stuff like that. Get the passing yards going, get him easy completions, make him feel good. Opponent pass yards per game for our defense, 275.5. That number probably looks a lot worse than it actually is. Baylor's whole game plan was just to go out there and air the ball out. And then Florida's game plan it wasn't about the game plan, but a lot of the yards were in garbage time. We got up big against Florida, and we had the game in hand. We were playing bend, don't break. So this number is really inaccurate. I hope UCLA tries to throw it. Like if they look at that number and take it to heart and they try to throw against us a lot, I think they're going to have a bad time, and Dante Moore is going to get rattled. Opponent completion percentage, right in the middle of the pack. Again, we were playing some pretty good talent. Sack percentage, we're right in the middle of the pack. But again, playing a lot tougher talent than a lot of teams. QB sacks percentage is reasonably high. You don't like that. But that's kind of where we are. So those are the stats for both teams, for Utah and for UCLA. Move on to a new segment, guys. It's going to be breaking down the matchups. So what are the key matchups for Utah and the key matchups for UCLA? So the first thing we got to look at is going to be Spencer Fano going up against Laiatu Latu. So this is a tough one, guys. And if you look, Spencer Fano's at a 51.9 pass block grade. Let me see. I won't pull it up, but he had a bad grade against Weber State, which is pretty concerning. And the guy he's going to be going up against is going to be, let's pull him up, edge rusher. Let me get him up here. So edge rusher for UCLA. It's right here. Look, he's the number one edge rusher in college football, according to PFF right now for the grades. Now, this is concerning. Again, this grade for Laiatu Latu is against an FCS team and two G5 teams, right? But even if this is quite a bit inflated and he's more like an 80 or a high 70 type of guy grading out, his grade's significantly better than Spencer Fano's, and his calling card is pass rushing, whereas the struggle for Spencer is pass rushing. So you can't expect Spencer to go out there and be a superstar in pass blocking, but he's going to need to be serviceable, or this is going to be a tough day for whoever is in that Utah quarterback position. This is going to be the toughest matchup by far of the season for Spencer Fano, and he didn't grade out super well when he had to go against Princely, so a little concerning here. My guess is we're going to give him a lot of help, a lot of running back chip blocks, a lot of guards helping out with the double team, stuff like that. So part of why I point this out is saying Spencer Fano and Laiatu Latu it's going to be a tough matchup for Spencer Fano, but also it's going to put a lot of pressure on the rest of the offensive line. But this is a tough matchup. If Laiatu Latu can get back there or if Spencer Fano doesn't do a good job against him, it's going to be tough for Utah's offense to move consistently, especially if Nate Johnson's in there, doesn't have a ton of experience. He's going to have some struggles throughout the game, I'm sure. And, having a clean pocket is going to be important. So that's one of the first matchups to look at. Matchup I want to look at is going to be UCLA's wide receiver, J. Michael Sturdivant, against Utah's cornerback, Zamiah Vaughn. Now, I think J. Michael Sturdivant has been awesome this year. He is a playmaker. He is very good. He is going to be a tough go for Utah. He's clearly leading the team for UCLA in receiving yards, and he's clearly the best receiver. The PFF grades definitely back that up, right? 84.1 is a elite grade. That's extremely good. And Zamiah Vaughn has been a guy, some ups and downs this year, but coming into this season, we all thought really highly of Zamiah Vaughn and had extremely high expectations for what he could accomplish this year, right? He's grading out a little rough to get going this year, right? A 58.6 coverage grade, 63.2 overall grade. So tough to see. He did so dang well last year. So him stepping up to the plate, and Sturdivant seems pretty damn good. He really does. And he's going to need, Zamiah Vaughn's going to need to step up to the plate and do a good job. You won't shut him down. That's not what I'm expecting, but hold him to, 70, 60 yards. I do want to make a quick caveat, though. Zamiah Vaughn's grade is against Power 5 teams, where Sturdivant's grade is not. I mean, they both have an FCS game in there as well, but Sturdivant's grades are not against Power 5 teams. They have not played a Power 5 team. But I would say Sturdivant's pretty good. He could be one of the better receivers in the Pac-12. I'd say pretty likely he will be as we continue on this year. But Zamiah Vaughn's was against tougher competition, so maybe Sturdivant will be brought down to earth a little bit, and we'll see Zamiah Vaughn break out of his shell a little. I think he'll also have some safety help all over the top, so that should help. But tough matchup here, and definitely one to keep an eye on in the Utah-UCLA game. Group matchup we're going to look at is going to be, or the next matchup we're going to talk about is actually going to be position groups going against each other. So we take a look at the running backs for UCLA. Neither one of these guys has an exceptional grade. With running backs, they actually tend to grade quite a bit higher than most positions. So neither one of these guys is a killer grade. This guy right here, Anthony Adkins, that's a killer grade, but he's the third guy in this rotation. And these two are good, not amazing, but they do have a really high yards per carry. But I think seeing such a low, not a low grade, but a more above average rather than insane grade should make you feel pretty good if you're a Utah fan that probably a lot of these really high yards per carry these guys are getting are more about the talent they're facing than it is about how talented they really are, right? So let's take a look here. So for Utah, the linebacker group against a good slate of Power 5 teams so far is looking pretty darn good. So Lander Barton looks like a stud. A 78.6 grade is an extremely good grade, borderline elite grade. And so he's going to have to get in there. Not the greatest run defense grade, but slightly above average, and he's a beast in coverage. Karine Reed, I feel really good that he's going to be back this game. I think there's very, very high odds he's back, and he's a good run defender. Lavani Damuni, look at this grade. I mentioned it when we broke down the stats. That's a extremely good run defense grade, and so he's going to need to step up. Looks good there. So I feel pretty good about that. Like I talked about earlier, shutting down the run game for UCLA is going to be really important for Utah. And judging by the looks of the PFF grades, I'm liking the matchup for us, right? I'm liking the matchup. So that's one of the big battles we're going to see in this game. It is going to be UCLA's DBs versus Utah's wide receivers. Now, UCLA's got some of these DBs are really damn good. I mean, Kamari Ramsey really looks deadly, right? And this whole safety room looks pretty darn good. Again, not against crazy good competition, but those grades are pretty good. You got to respect it. You can't just shake that off like they're not going to be good. And then Utah's wide receiver room going against them. So, I got to go. All right, let's go to UCLA's corners. Let's take a look at those. All right, boom. Again, a really good group of DBs. This is a good defense, dude. Even if you adjust quite a bit for who they're playing, this is going to be a tough team to throw the ball against. I mean, look at these coverage grades. Damn, dude. That's pretty impressive. Now let's take a look at Utah's wide receiver room to see kind of how we match up against these guys. All right, man. Now, again, we're playing tougher competition. Mikey Matthews looked awesome last week against Weber and got to play a bigger role. Money Parks has looked good this year. Devon Vele and Micah Pittman have not looked great this year. They got to sit last week because they were a little banged up. Hopefully they come back out and look great. One guy I'm excited to see get in there, and I'm hoping he carves out a bigger role, is Munir McClain. Only 47 snaps this year, but on those 47 snaps, he's grading out at 87.5. That is elite grade. Again, really small sample size. You don't know exactly how good he's going to be this year, but that's a good sign. I want to see him get in there, earn some rotation spots, and I think he did last week. I think he earned some snaps. I'd be shocked to see him not get in there at least a little bit. This wide receiver room's ridiculously deep. All we need to do is find one guy that clicks and one guy that can take a lot of pressure off Nate Johnson, dude. These guys need to get open and they need to make plays for this offense, or it is going to be a tough day. We are going to have a tough day against this defense. Because even if you want to say it's it's inflated quite a bit, it's because of who they played for UCLA. It's still, this looks like a good defense. If you're thinking we're just going to, destroy these guys, you're probably wrong. So that's Utah's wide receivers against UCLA's DBs. All right, and so now let's talk about the final thoughts. How do I think this game is going to go? I think there's a lot of different things that could happen. Like I mentioned earlier, you don't know how good this UCLA team really is. They could be just as good as the numbers say, which would mean they're probably really underrated and one of the better teams in the country, much less the Pac-12. Seriously, they could be an extremely good team. More likely than not, UCLA is going to get brought down to earth a little bit. I'm not saying Utah is going to go out there and beat the crap out of them, but I am saying that Utah is probably going to show them, like, hey, you haven't played a team like us. I think UCLA probably is a fair statement in saying we haven't played a team like UCLA either. That's fair, and I'm sure that's what UCLA fans are thinking right now. So I think this is going to be a small step up for Utah, right? Florida looks pretty damn good, and we look dominant against Florida. And for UCLA, it's going to be a big step up compared to what they've played. So we got to take that into account as we break this down. Now, UCLA is only getting 31 points a game against two G5 teams. Now, what does that tell you? That means they're going to struggle to put points. They're one of the worst red zone scoring teams in the country. Pretty good at stopping people from scoring in the red zone, but one of the worst when they actually need to score in the red zone. One of the worst in the country. So that's good there. I think their D-line is going to give us some problems. I think we're going to see some frustration there. Our tight ends are going to need to step up, and they're going to need to pass block. They're going to need to, start to work into this game because they haven't been doing great all season. I also think we haven't opened up the playbook a lot, right? I don't think we've seen us open up the playbook a lot. So I think the key for Utah to win this game is going to be, run the ball well, run the ball effectively. It's not going to be an easy team to run against. They're doing pretty well stopping the run, but we're not an easy team to stop the run against, right? We're one of the better rushing teams in the country year in and year out. So if they really think they can do it, they're going to have to earn it. And we're going to make them earn it, and we're going to, try to punch them in the mouth as best as we can. And I'm hoping we can go out there and establish the run, because if we can't, then you put a lot on Nate Johnson's shoulders. You're going to put a lot on his shoulders. And, I want him involved in the RPO too. If Nate, and just so you know, there's going to be my breakdown if Nate Johnson's the guy. And I'll talk about if Cam's the guy in a minute. But I want to see some RPO. I want to see some real creativity, some just let's open up this playbook, dude. You're going to need, Andy Ludwig is going to need to get creative in this game if the run does not work, right? Even if it does, we're going to need to get a little creative. Okay, so that's what Utah needs to do and take a lot of the pressure off Nate Johnson. The receivers also need to step up. Vele and what's his name? Pittman cannot just be as rough as they've been to start the year. They need to step up. They need to be guys that Nate Johnson can trust. And if he throws a duck up there on the sideline that's about to get picked off, you better jump up there and break that pass up. because Nate Johnson's going to need their help, whether that's getting open or when he makes a mistake, breaking it up when a DB's about to pick it off. It's just, we need all the help we can get. I think we got a lot of talent in that receiver core. Someone just needs to step up. I feel good about our receiver core. I wish the high end of the receiver core was being the high end that we know they can be, which we just haven't seen this year yet. In Devon Vele specifically, I think he really needs to step into this game. We need to see it. This is the game. It's time, Devon. It's time to step up and show what you can do. And then on our defense, you gotta shut down the run, right? You gotta start to hit these guys. Oh, actually, one more thing about the offense. Spencer Fano, I mentioned it in the matchups thing earlier. Spencer Fano needs to step it up, dude. It's becoming a concerning thing. Like this, it's not the worst overall grade you've ever seen, but it's one above average game and two really rough games. And now I know offensive line play grade-wise really varies, but if you have not noticed some rough plays from Spencer Fano, I don't know what you're watching. And I love the kid, and I'm as high on anyone on this guy. Seriously, I think he's going to be an awesome player for Utah. But it's time to step up and earn that, like show why you're the starting left tackle. You didn't just get this given to you. Show why you got it. And then now let's move on to the defense. Because that Latu guy is going to be a nightmare. Number 15. That's a matchup to watch, whether you're UCLA or a Utah fan. It's number 55 for Utah on the offensive line. He's the left tackle against number 15 for UCLA and Latu. I would love for this to be like a coming out party for Spencer Fano where he just looks real good against this guy. All right, and now Utah's defense. What we need to shut down the run. This team is one of the best running teams in the country right now. They've got a stack of running backs averaging over 8 yards a carry. We're going to need to punch them in the mouth, right? Our D-line is as good as, almost as good as any in the country. I really believe that. We got a stacked D-line. I think we'll have some talent back. We'll have some playmakers we haven't had back. Maybe O'Toole will be back, that sort of deal. Maybe Peppa might be back. Someone's going to be back. One or two playmakers will be back on this D-line. So that'll be exciting, and hopefully they can really start to create havoc there. Linebackers are going to need to step up. These running backs will get second level, right? It's going to happen. Make the play when they get there. Third level, Vaki and Cole Bishop, I have 100% faith. And same with the linebackers. I feel like our defense looks awesome this year. The one question is cornerback, right? We've had some struggles at corner, and it's a tough position. That was a position I played growing up for years and years. It's an embarrassing position when it's bad. It's a rough go. Zamiah Vaughn needs to limit Sturdivant. You can't expect him to shut down Sturdivant, but he needs to limit the guy. He needs to, get him to not be a superstar in this game. Don't let him be a difference maker. And that also comes from the safeties too and the play calling. Morgan Scalley should not put Vaughn in situations where he's going to get embarrassed by Sturdivant or where he's consistently one-on-one with no help over the top. I mean, that's going to be important. So Utah on defense needs to shut down the run, force Dante Moore into passing situations where he can't just go right to Sturdivant. He's got to look at his second and third option, and then he's going to start making mistakes. He's a young guy, right? And he's gonna throw some bad passes. This is gonna be by far the toughest game he's ever played, and by far the toughest environment he's ever played in. I mean, Coastal Carolina was their best matchup so far, and they do have a pretty decent home field, but it's not Utah. So I see it going. If Cam's in, the game plan is gonna be, let Cam do his thing, but also run the ball well. Like just simple game plan. Run the full offense. Don't hide stuff. Let's open up the playbook. Let's do a lot of wide receiver end arounds, a lot of wide receiver reverses, screens, that sort of deal. Open it up. Let Cam work his magic a little. I'm hoping if Cam is in there that it's really like he's 80-90% and looks pretty damn good. That's kind of how I'm giving this prediction. And then if Cam is in, JJ needs to have a good day too. It's just basically if Cam's in, we're just expecting a significantly higher level of quarterback play from him. It's kind of the bar is pretty high for Cam. So that's where we're at with those. if Cam is not in, how I see this game going is 24-21 for Utah. A tough game. UCLA is a good team, dude. If you don't think UCLA is good, I don't know what numbers you're looking at to tell you that. They might not be elite like the numbers are showing right now because of the talent they played, but they're good. Don't let anyone tell you they're not good because that's a good team. And then if Cam is in for Utah, I see the game 34-21. And the reason for that is just, Cam's a straight baller. He's a gamer. He's a guy that we know he can make plays. We know he can put the offense on his back when we need to, and he's just going to get it done. I see UCLA again having trouble scoring in the red zone against a really tough defense, and I think they're going to struggle moving the ball more than they have in any game. They're going to be caught in situations they just haven't been in before, and it's going to be a real test, especially with such a young quarterback. And if that run is not working the way they want it to, they're going to really have to test their young quarterback, and a lot of the time, a guy that young is going to crumble under the pressure. So, it is what it is. I'm not rooting for Dante Moore to be a failure in his career. I actually think he's going to be really good in his career. I just think he's not ready to have a game put on his back against Utah, and that's what we need to do, right? That's what we need to get done. So Cam will be a baller. He'll make plays. He'll get it done if he's in, and then if he's not, it's going to be a much closer game, and we're going to have to fight for every yard, every point, and just scrap till the end of this thing. If you guys haven't already, smash that like button. Also comment below. Do you agree with what I'm saying? Do you think Utah's going to win, and how? And make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. We're going to have a ton of Utah Utes football content coming out all year. And so if you're into that sort of thing, make sure you guys stay around. So subscribe. And if you guys could, if you have friends that love Utah football, share the video. If you have a Facebook page you like to post this stuff on, post the video there. I'd appreciate it a lot. And outside of that, I'm out of here. And go Utes.